New York Islanders forward Oliver Wahlstrom has filed for arbitration. And while that may sound a little strange at first, we'll explain why it's a good thing for both the player and the team. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs end. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We've got a lot to discuss today. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That's trade rumors, hirings, firings, the draft, free agency. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we'll cover it for you here on Locked On Islanders. And it's always great to talk Isles hockey with you, game time or anytime. So over the holiday weekend, Islanders restricted free agent forward Oliver Wahlstrom filed for arbitration. One of 14 players across the NHL who did do that. And, certain RFAs do have that right. And at first, you think about it. Here's Oliver Wahlstrom. Only played 32 games last year out of 82. Scored only 2 goals, 6 points, -6, 8 penalty minutes. Couldn't get out of the doghouse with Lane Lambert. Couldn't get out of the doghouse with Patrick Waugh. I mean, realistically, after some early chances, did not see the lineup again until the very last game of the regular season, which had no impact on the Islanders' playoff position. It was basically, let's let some guys get a chance to play and, let's give some guys a chance to rest. And, you could sit back and say, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense for Oliver Wahlstrom to actually file for arbitration, given that his numbers were just so bad. And it just doesn't seem like, the qualifying offer of $917,831, almost seems like you're overpaying for Wally. But here's the deal. By filing for arbitration, Oliver Wahlstrom is helping both the New York Islanders and himself. And I'll explain why. On the one hand, we know that the reason the Islanders qualified Oliver Wahlstrom is not so much because they want him back. It's because they don't want to lose him for nothing. We heard General Manager Lou Lamoriello mention that in his press conference. I believe it was before the draft. And I think that makes sense. You've heard everydayers, you've heard us talk about asset management and how important that is, and that the Islanders don't always do a great job of asset management. But in this case, if you have a choice of losing Oliver Wahlstrom for nothing and just letting him go, or giving him the qualifying offer and then trying to trade his rights or do a sign and trade, well, then you're getting at least something, even if it's a 6th or 7th round pick you're at least getting something for Oliver Wahlstrom. By filing for arbitration, what that does is it sets a date by which the Islanders and Wally have to work out a deal. And, had he not filed for arbitration, had he just signed the qualifying offer, you're in a situation where, okay, he's done. And between now and training camp, there's no urgency to get a deal done. So let's say that the hearing is going to be set for late July or early August. Even, obviously the hearing has to get done before training camp. This creates pressure on the Islanders and any team that's interested in trading for Oliver Wahlstrom to get a deal done before that arbitration date. Because once the arbitration hearing takes place and a number is reached by the arbiter, then, whatever team wants to sign Wally or acquire Wally in a trade has to pay what the arbiter wants. By putting a deadline on it, you're forcing the team and any team that wants to acquire Wahlstrom to make a deal before that date. And let's face it, that benefits Oliver Wahlstrom as well. Because if you're Wally and hey, if I stay with the New York Islanders, I don't have much of a chance of playing every game. I'm going to be stuck in the press box most nights. Maybe I'll play when someone's hurt or slumping or, whenever. But I'll be lucky to get another 32 games played, barring a major injury or barring me just balling out in training camp and being outstanding. So Wally wants to go somewhere else. But here's, again, the deal. By filing for arbitration, that pushes up the date of a trade, potentially. Everybody knows about deadlines. So if you're Oliver Wahlstrom, you want to move to a new team before training camp starts, not like a few days before the new season or even halfway through training camp, because you want to get a fair and full look from whichever team acquires you. You want the time to get used to your new teammates, to get used to playing with them, to see where do I fit in this new team's lineup? What line mates work best? Where's the chemistry? Who do I know on this team? You want to be able to get, even if it's from a personal standpoint, I have to find a place to live. I have to learn where to get my hair cut, where to get food, what the good restaurants are. All these little things that involve moving from a personal standpoint, also part of the equation. So from the Islanders standpoint, you want that potential cap hit that Oliver Wahlstrom would have off your books sooner so you could sign, for example, Simon Holmstrom, or if you're adding someone else, whatever it is, these are, you want that cap hit off. And let's even say the Islanders trade Oliver Wahlstrom for another player. You want to look at that player in training camp and give him the full opportunity to show what he could do and whether he deserves to be on this team's everyday roster. So, look, we know about deadlines. A lot of people won't act until there's a deadline. This speeds things up by creating an earlier deadline that hopefully will benefit the Islanders, will benefit Oliver Wahlstrom, and will benefit whatever team he goes to and whatever player, if it is indeed a player and not a pick, that the Islanders get for Wally in a prospective trade. So, it may sound ridiculous on the surface. How could Oliver Wahlstrom not sign the qualifying offer and ask for more money? But it really is a move by Wahlstrom's agent. And I think the Islanders and Wally's agent discussed this. Let's do this beforehand. We'll create a deadline. We'll make things happen quicker. It'll benefit all the parties involved. And I think it's a solid move by Wally, his agent, the Islanders, Lou, everyone else. Now the Islanders just have to try to get as much value as possible for the rights to Wahlstrom as quickly as they can. Let's see how this plays out, and we'll keep an eye on it for Locked On Islanders. As soon as something happens, we'll let you know. We have got a lot more to discuss on today's show. Let's put our thinking caps on and think about the future. Where will the Islanders be cap-wise a year from now? Potentially, it could look a lot better than it does right now. We're going to talk about that. Plus, what the Islanders still need to do before the season starts. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who was with the Islanders for parts of 2 seasons early in their existence, but he was part of a trade that really had a big impact on 2 generations of Islanders. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But now with the NBA and NHL playoffs over, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You are a Met fan, a Yankee fan, you want to bet on NHL futures, you want to bet on the Islanders futures. Hey, check out the odds, maybe some football futures as well. So lots of great opportunities at FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube with a free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So where will the Islanders be in a year? I mean, we know that this team is oh so capped out right now, that they have less than $1 million in cap space. They still have a lot of needs. They still have a lot of players with bad contracts that, either it's too much term, too much money, or both. Guys who just aren't producing up to their cap number, and guys with no trade clauses or modified no trade clauses. But I'm here to say that there is hope that the Islanders will have more cap space. Now, there are 3 defensemen next year who will be RFAs, restricted free agents. And the Islanders have to sign, you would hope, 2 of them at least, if not all 3. And those 3 players are Samuel Bolduc, Alexander Romanov, and Noah Dobson. So you got to try to sign those guys. Dauber obviously is going to be the one who will cost the most out of the 3. You got to figure he's getting somewhere between $8.5 and $9.5 million a year for the next 8 years on his deal. You got to figure Romanov somewhere in the $5 to $5.5 million range. Bolduc, depending on what he does, could be a lot less. But for the unrestricted free agents, you have 4 players right now on the roster who are going to be UFAs. Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, Hudson Fasching, and obviously, once again, Mike Riley. And add to the mix a little, the possibility, again, depending on how he plays and whether or not the team is interested in bringing him back at the NHL level. But you certainly know that Maxim Tsiplakov, he has a 1-year deal. They would have to figure out, his future. at some point before the New York Islanders start the new season. So a lot of guys out there. You also have the contracts of J.G. Pageau and Anders Lee. At the trade deadline this year or by the draft next year, both of those guys will be in the final year of their deal. So, depending on where the Islanders are in the standings and how those two players are playing, the difficulty of moving them this offseason was that you had too much term left for older guys. But if you're just talking about 1 year left on their deals, you may be able to move them. And if you can clear the two of them off your books in their entirety, that's an additional $12 million in cap space. The cap is also supposed to be going up. And that is certainly good news for the New York Islanders. So if you can get that $12 million off the books, that's very, very good. And again, even if you choose to re-sign Nelson or Palmieri, the odds are they are not going to earn the same kind of money that they have been earning up until now because of their age. So with Nelson, Lou may go longer term, but less money per year. That is something he's done in the past. Palmieri probably not going to get as much. Maybe, if he stays, $3.5 million or $4 million a year instead of $5 million, or, he could be sent again, traded like Lee could be traded. And again, if you figure that the cap goes up by roughly another $5 million, the Islanders could have more than $25 million to work with, even if they do not trade away Lee or Pageau. Now, some of that's going to be taken up by giving deals to your Romanovs and your Dobsons and what have you. But if you can get $25 million worth of cap space, and again, if you could trade Lee and or Pageau, you add even more to that number. That's when it is theoretically possible for the New York Islanders to make some big trades and to make some possible free agent signings that are not necessarily secondary or bargain basement players. Now, again, keep in mind that the Islanders in their history have never signed an elite unrestricted free agent. Again, when I say their history, that's since the cap came into existence in 2005. But even before that, the Islanders never signed an elite free agent in their prime. And, you got Brock Besser, Nikolai Ehlers, Travis Konechny, Brad Marchand, Leon Draisaitl on an expiring contract, Mitch Marner on an expiring contract. Again, not all those guys will absolutely reach free agency. And as I said, the Islanders' track record indicates they will have difficulty bringing in an elite free agent. But the opportunities to do something, they multiply greatly if you have $25 million worth of cap space rather than what they had this year, which was $6 million worth of cap space. And if you can get either Lee, if you can get both Lee and Pageau off the books, you're over $30 million worth of cap space. It allows you the ability to make trades, to have flexibility, to make moves that this team has not been able to do. So, again, the obstacles are, as far as free agency, we've never signed a big ticket free agent. And as far as, the situation, is Lou Lamoriello going to be that aggressive? That is sort of the big question. Now, he was aggressive this offseason, at least in the fact that, he knew he had severe limitations He stayed within those limitations, still managed to sign Siplakov, who was supposedly there were about a dozen teams interested in him. Managed to acquire Duclair and re-sign Riley, and I expect, again, nothing official yet, but I expect Simon Holmstrom will re-sign, whether he's in the lineup every day or ends up being, the 13th or 14th forward. That remains to be seen, but he at least used what wiggle room he had and was proactive, okay? If he continues along that train of thought next year, again, assuming he's back, there's a lot more potential money to work with and a lot more options. So we'll see. A, is Lou back next year? B, is he going to use that potential available cap space, or does he make deals earlier than that at the trade deadline or at the draft to try to figure out how to improve this team? We'll see, but a lot more possibilities in a year if the Islanders play their cards right than what they had this year. All right, more to get to on today's show. The one, we had our poll up on our YouTube page about what this team needs. We'll talk about the results and maybe what they may be able to do about it. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So our little poll, and thank you to the 280 people who have voted. And the results are pretty clear. We gave 4 choices plus the other, which is always available. So the 4 choices were a top 6 forward with speed, bottom 6 toughness, a puck-moving defenseman, overall depth, or other. And with other, we asked you to comment. Not that you couldn't comment on any of the other choices, but that was the deal. By far, the winner, a top 6 forward with speed, 59%, followed by a puck-moving defenseman at 17%, overall depth at 13%, bottom 6 toughness at 9%, and 3% said other. So I want to talk about the importance of adding that last piece. And look, we know to be a contending team, you need to have talented players, and then you need to put them in the best position to succeed. And one of the things that I think held back the Islanders in recent years and last season for sure is that while they did have some talent, they did not have 6 top 6 forwards on their roster. And they then put players who were not legitimate top 6 forwards into the top 6, which, let's face it, does not put them in the best position to succeed. And look, 3-4 years ago, Anders Lee was a top 6 forward. J.G. Pageau, while better suited for the third line, was capable of slipping into the top 6 if needed, a second line guy for a week or two if somebody got hurt. But they aren't there anymore. Hudson Fashion, useful bottom 6 player, not suited to the top 6. Pierre Engvall can be a useful bottom 6 player, not in his best position when asked to be a top 6 player. Same thing for Casey Cizikas. Just not what he's best at. Kyle McLean, very useful player in the NHL. Guy could play his role and play it well, but they're not going to provide you with the scoring that you look for from a top 6 player. So with signing Anthony Duclair, what the Islanders did, and this was very, very smart, They signed a second-line player at a third-line salary, basically. And they're going to play him on the first line. This may not be the perfect place for Anthony Duclair, but I think he will be able to fit in under the circumstances and be in the top. He belongs in the top 6, and he can play there. What the Islanders need to add most is one more guy who fits into the top 6. Now, how do you do that? Well, there are a couple of options. You could bring up somebody from Bridgeport. Is William Dufour or Matthew Maggio, are they ready to play in the NHL and maybe be a second-line player? They have to prove it. They have to show it in training camp. Is there another guy available in free agency for very little money who might be able to fit in that category? Could Simon Holmstrom take another step forward, show that he's capable of maybe being on the second line? It's possible. I don't think it's likely. But again, you need options. You need to get a legitimate player who belongs in the top 6 and insert him into the top 6. Whether you add somebody on the cheap, whether you bring up somebody from the minors, or whether somebody continues their growth and development, that, in my mind, and obviously in your mind, according to our survey, is the one thing the Islanders still need to do. Now, again, to tie in what we talked about in our second segment, you could still trade away a J.G. Pageau or an Anders Lee or another player to free up some cap space and add a legitimate top 6 forward to your lineup. But I don't think that's the easiest thing to do right now. All right, we'll see what Lou does, if anything. But again, maybe you trade Oliver Wahlstrom for somebody who could fit in to the top 6. Possible, not easy to do. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today would be the 74th birthday of late Islanders forward Doug Rombaugh. Rombaugh, a Fergus, Ontario native, an 8th-round pick of the Buffalo Sabres in their expansion season, 1970, and did not make his NHL debut until 72-73 when he played 5 games and scored 2 goals. Split the 73-74 season between the Sabres and the Islanders. And then the 74-75 season, he started with the Islanders and then was traded mid-year to the Minnesota North Stars. And who did the Islanders get in return? J.P. Parise, a guy who not only did he play a big role for the Islanders in the 70s, but as you probably know, his son played a role for the Islanders in recent years. So again, the Islanders getting a lot for Rombaugh, more of a two-way center, not a big offensive guy, never scored double-digit goals in the NHL, spent 1.5 seasons with the North Stars, and then finished his career in the minors, hanging up his skates after the 77-78 season. For his career, 150 NHL games, 24 goals, 51 points, and 80 penalty minutes. His best game as an Islander, pretty easy to pinpoint, March 24th, 1974 at the old Omni in Atlanta. Islanders and their expansion cousins, the Atlanta Flames, going at it. Phil Meir, the goalie for the Flames, Jerry Desjardins, the goalie for the Islanders. And our Islanders birthday of the day, Doug Rombaugh, with the score 2-1 Islanders. Isles on the power play. Rombaugh scores late in the period, first period, to make it 3-1 Islanders. Ralph Stewart and Dennis Potvin with the assists. So Rombaugh on the board there. And then in the second period, with the score 3-2, Rombaugh scores again on the power play. Again, it's Ralph Stewart and Dennis Potvin on the assists. And late in the game, with the Islanders ahead 5-4, Rombaugh assisting on a goal by Dennis Potvin to clinch the win. Billy Harris also the assist. Islanders beat the Flames on the road 6-4 for Doug Rombaugh. 2 goals and assist. He was a +1. He had 5 shots on goal. which tied him with Ralph Stewart for the team lead. And he was a big reason the Islanders got this 6-4 win. Unfortunately and sadly, Rambaugh left us too soon, passing away at the age of 64 in 2015. But today would have been his 74th birthday. And Doug Rambaugh is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We will continue to bring you all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. If something is going on with Oliver Wahlstrom, we will certainly let you know any signings, any trades, and we will continue to look at some of the Islanders draft picks and other acquisitions over the course of the offseason. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.